Here with Cynthia Scott, or Cindy. She's a registered dietitian who specializes in baby and toddler nutrition. Cindy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I am at the baby dietitian on Instagram. I really focus on the first 1,000 days of life. So from conception to 2 years on making sure that we're providing optimal nutrition to help, our babies thrive, not just grow, but to thrive and set a healthy dietary pattern from the start.
Awesome, thank you. So, this new congressional report that just came out this month on heavy metals in baby food is seems pretty concerning. But is this new information?
No, it's been on the radar. They normally do like a report on this every few years. I think the last one was 2018, but don't quote me on that. So it's not something that is shockingly new information. It is a concern. Obviously, there does need to be more regulations out there. And I think it's actually a good thing that these reports are coming out so that more people are drawn attention to it, and that hopefully that means more changes will be made.
Yeah, absolutely. We need so much more regulation of that. So, in this report, they were looking at heavy metals, including arsenic, lead, mercury, and cadmium. So, I'm just going to share my screen with you. So, this graph here that we're seeing right here is looking at the different foods that are culprits. So, they're talking about the top 15 foods that account for 55% of total IQ loss from children's dietary exposure. So the main concern with heavy metals is that it does damage the developing brain, which can lead to lower intelligence. So these are the main foods here. Top one being rice is the main exposure, and then whole milk, apple juice, infant formula, fruit juice, and infant cereal, and then so on. So, Cindy, when you look at this, what do you make of that?
So it is overwhelming. But if we really break it down and we're focusing more on like a variety of foods versus a very baby food based diet, it doesn't concern me as much. If we're going for more whole food options and like a variety of nutrient dense foods instead of focusing on like, rice cereal, we're going to have every meal for 3 weeks when we're starting our baby on solids. That's concerning to me. But if we're focusing more on a variety, I think we really limit our exposure to these things, our baby's exposure to these things. I mean, they've already made regulations on like how oatmeal based infant fortified cereal is better than rice cereal. We should be going for that anyways. Juice is not supposed to be provided for the first 2 years of life. That's a dietary guideline. So if we're just getting rid of like unnecessary things, we're already, helping reduce this exposure.
Thank you. So, you mentioned baby led weaning earlier when we were talking, as opposed to doing baby food. Can you talk about the difference between those a little bit and how that might be helpful for limiting heavy metal exposure?
Yeah, so baby-led weaning or baby-led feeding, whatever way you want to call it, is just an approach that focuses on the baby getting meals that are very similar to the parents. So that means we're eating the same thing as our baby, but we're modifying it to an appropriate texture for the child to consume. That's not a choking risk. We'll also modify, like we won't add salt to it or added sugar. If we want to do that to our foods, we will later. But we eat the same meals. And if we're eating a variety, if we're eating a healthy diet, then our child will get that as well.
Great, thank you. So it sounds like focusing less on purees and more feeding your child all the natural foods and textures that a person is supposed to get exposed to.
Yeah, so the history of starting solids, like it used to be that we were supposed to start solids, or the guidelines were to start solids at 4 months. And a child's not able to feed themselves at 4 months. So that's when the whole boom of baby food started, because you can't give your child finger foods at 4 months old. Like there's no way for them to eat that. That's a huge choking risk. So now that the guidelines from AAP and the World Health Organization recommend 6 months, our children are now able to sit up unassisted. They're able to bring their food to their mouth. They're able to self-feed. And so they're like developmentally more mature GI wise and from like an oral and motor standpoint. So that's why the baby-led weaning is more so a thing now, is because those regulations changed.
Hmm. So starting solids at 6 months enabled them to actually be more ready to eat finger foods and normal textures other than just purees.
Right. Yes.
And then let's take a look at this graph. So I found this graph here actually to be really encouraging, because if you look at the bar on the far right, the column on the far right, it tells you the reduction in toxic heavy metals just from switching from a high risk food to a safer alternative. What did you think about this one?
No, I love this. Because like we already talked about the rice cereal and the fruit juice. But also like I think touching on teething biscuits, there's really no nutritional need for teething biscuits. So I don't see any need to ever provide them. Especially if you can just provide other soothing foods like they have listed, the banana or the cucumber, or you could do like breast milk popsicles. Like there's so many other things to do if you're providing something for teething relief versus giving a teething biscuit. And then for the vegetables, like the carrots and sweet potatoes, if we are focusing on a variety, then we can still provide carrots and sweet potatoes every now and then. We just don't give them like for every meal in a pouch. That's the problem, like let's give a variety of fruits and vegetables instead of just, relying on a few.
Mhm. Thank you. That's so helpful. Do you have any kind of closing advice for parents listening to this?
I think just take a deep breath and yeah, we want to advocate for this, that there does need to be more regulations, but also like the document did say that the arsenic levels were improving, but from the last time they tested it. So I'm just hopeful that we continue to move in a more positive way with this and just, we're all doing the best we can.
Mhm. So parents making those safer alternative choices, as well as all of us making this issue more well known and publicizing it, I think will be really essential for getting some of these changes to actually happen. So
I
the
agree.
heavy metals are naturally found in soil and air, but some of it is actually from pesticides. When I was in public health school, we looked at this chemical pesticide called atrazine, and it's actually been banned in pretty much every European country, in Australia, New Zealand, but it's still used in the US. And I just feel like in the US, the food regulation is not up to par, and we have so many competing interests from lobbyists that really control our lawmakers. So we as parents, if we can actually make this issue a lot more visible, I think that will help toward overall safer foods.
I totally agree. I think that's a great point. Yeah.
Thank you, Cindy, so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I always appreciate our conversations together.